Hello, everyone. I am 100% convinced that Banque de France has selected the Quant Network. Now, a disclaimer, you're not going to hear an official announcement from Banque de France, but if you've been following me for a while now, this is something that I do. I try to connect the dots for you and so on. So, yes, I'm 100% convinced that Banque de France did in fact select the Quant Network. Now, why is that significant? As we know, Banque de France is the oversight of the Bank of International Settlements. So why does this even matter? Well, when we get more into it, it's because of people that was recently added to the board of directors for the Quant Network, and that is David Yates, the significance of what he brings to the table. Today, earlier on the X Space, which is, by the way, every Tuesday at roughly noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, or sometimes, as of today, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 Pacific, we discussed in that X Space the significance of David Yates. But it's understanding the vision that Augustine Carstens introduced in regards to the Finternet. Now, while the Finternet doesn't have an official name, well, let's face it, we can draw the conclusion that it basically stands for finance and internet. That's the Finternet. But why is that important? And more importantly, Augustine Carstens, will he see this come into fruition? Or actually, is it already into fruition? It's just the evolving of the Finternet. Let's get into why it all matters in today's Quant Deep Dive Outline. Smash that like if you haven't done so already. Check out what really matters moving forward. First thing we're going to get into is this, and that is, again, some of these concepts. Because when you understand the Finternet, and when you understand how it was proposed, not just by Augustine Carstens, but also from Nadan Nilkani, you understand the goals, and that basically is the interconnectedness. For example, multiple financial ecosystems. Again, ecosystems. More importantly, the technological advancements, the sound governance, and the whole idea of an innovative platform for cross-border transactions. But it needs to be seamless. And if anything, it has to be efficient moving forward. Introducing this particular segment, because it's not just the whole topic of Mr. Augustine Carstens being all gung-ho about the whole concept of the Finternet. It's recognizing some other key players. Yes, this particular gentleman from Bretton Woods. Why is this important? Well, as you see on the screen here, a shout out to Subjective Views. Subjective Views shared the whole idea that you have Bretton Woods Committee calling the Finternet a bold vision, and definitely touches on the following. Number one, global fast payment architecture, Project Nexus, 24/7 real-time gross settlement, and more importantly, unified ledger and Project Agora. Project Agora has been in the news quite a bit lately in regards to a connection to, for example, Quant Network, and people want to see more about this. Listen to this. This is only 3.5 minutes, but it was basically posted just a couple days ago. Let's go ahead and play this. We'll come right back. Here we go.
You are thinking about the second report in this series that the working group is going to release, and you're looking at the global fast payments architecture. So I thought maybe you would share a little bit with the audience today about kind of what problem, what hurdles the group is looking at, and maybe some of the early thinking around the recommendations.
So the G20 has looked at global payments, and they concluded that they were costly, complex, slow, and inefficient. And so they set some targets for the FSB and the CPMI, which is the group at the BIS that thinks about payment matters, to try to make progress to reduce the cost, increase inclusivity. And there's been some progress, but I don't think they're going to meet their objectives in terms of where they hope to get the cost of payments by 2027. The good news is there's a lot of good work going on. There have been a number of countries that have been very successful in developing instant payment systems, not just developing them, but also getting a take-up by their citizenry. Brazil, India, some of the other some of the Southeast Asian countries, they have instant payment systems that aren't just there in theory, but they're there in practice, and they're actually core to the payment systems. In other places, like the United States, like Europe, there are instant payment systems, but their share of use in terms of domestic payments is de minimis. And so it's a little hard to have an integrated global instant payment system if people in big regions like Europe and the US are not using them. So I think one conclusion of the paper is we got to figure out a way to make the instant payment systems in the important economies of the world more successful. I think the BIS has done a lot of great work through the BIS Innovation Hubs. They have a project called Project Nexus that actually is really, I think, very well thought through in terms of how you would actually knit these national instant payment systems together. They propose they, I think, conclude correctly that a hub and spoke system is a lot better than a whole bunch of individual countries trying to manage bilateral relationships with other countries, because obviously the number of linkages, if you do it bilaterally, goes up geometrically relative to just linking to a central hub. So I think the BIS is very much on the right track. But the problems are really getting the national instant payment systems viable. And two, making sure that the central banks keep moving towards 24/7 real-time gross settlement. Because if you don't have real-time gross settlement, you're always going to be left with some residual liquidity settlement risk in your instant payment systems. So that's another aspect where we need to do a little bit more work. There's another much broader vision that we're going to consider in the paper, which is the idea of a Finternet. So an internet that's for financial assets more broadly. The idea of the Finternet, and this is something that Augustine Carstens has written and talked a lot about, who's the general manager of the BIS. This is where you basically take a financial asset and you represent it as a token, and the tokens would be able to be settled on a unified ledger. And those tokens would actually be able to embed smart contracts that would execute automatically when a given set of conditions was triggered. It's a very different regime than just linking instant payment systems together. It's probably a more bold vision, but we're probably 20 years away from that if everything goes really, really well over the next coming decade. So it's more of a vision than, and we don't really have a path to going there. Although the BIS has also been pretty important here. They have a project Agora where they basically partnered with the IFI to bring together some private banks to figure out how could you actually take this forward. So I think we're making some progress, but the progress is slower than what is desired.
Okay, so one thing that was mentioned from this gentleman over at Bretton Woods was the whole idea of faster instant payments. Now, let's introduce somebody that was part of faster instant payments, and that is David Yates. Shout out to Sebastian, great host of our X Space that we do on these Tuesdays. So Sebastian shared this as well, and this is going to come across your screen here in a bit, but it's not just Sebastian sharing this, it's pointing out a key thing, and that is the announcement from, of course, the one and only Gilbert Verdi. And Gilbert goes into detail that, recently he was thrilled to announce the appointment of David Yates to their board of directors over at the Quant Network. More importantly, understanding that he's been a long time admirer of David, and he knows his expertise and philosophy aligns perfectly with the Quant Network's goal of bringing more efficient transparency and programmability to payments industry. Keep in mind, when it comes to Quant, everybody, it's the whole concept of many things, but more importantly, like when we talk about programmable money, programmable payments, that is going to be huge moving forward. Many will know David from his tenure as the CEO and chairman over at Vocalink, a MasterCard company, where he transformed it into a globally competitive company, eventually overseeing its acquisition by MasterCard. He went on to be the president of MasterCard's new payment platforms, and he contributed significantly to the industry innovation advancement. So this guy's a big deal, and more importantly, from this screenshot, shout out to Quant Papa, he is in fact part of the board of directors. You see him along with Guy Dietrich and Neil Smith. So, it's kind of like you have this trifecta, this trinity, if you will, of significance here in regards to David Yates. As we get a little bit more into it, some highlights other than what we already pointed out was basically that, David was also not just part of Vocalink, but also president over at Western Union and First Data. I'm telling you flat out, I think it's a matter of time that we get some announcements in the future through people like David working with, for example, Western Union to get the job done in regards to Quant, Western Union, and so on. Again, think about it, programmable payments. Wouldn't Western Union greatly benefit from some of this technology moving forward, especially since Western Union, if you're going to send, for example, your aunt who's a missionary in Africa, like mine was in the past, a payment, it would take about 2 weeks for them to receive that particular payment deep into the African Congo, right? Again, with Western Union. So understand that he still has these connections, and I'm just going to go ahead and call it. I think that's going to be a thing that will eventually happen. Does it happen in 2025? I don't know, but I think there's something there. He also served on the boards of WorldPay, Concardis, and some of these other key ones. And more importantly, he also worked as operating partner for Advent International, Temasek, and Cirrus Capital. Now, what I want to show you is this. We talk about the whole concept of the Finternet. Listen to this, okay? This is a key finding from Quant Papa. Shout out to you, brother, if you're watching at some point. And it's this interview from 2018.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Lumley from Finextra, and today in Conversation With, I'll be speaking to the new CEO of Vocalink, David Yates. And of course, we're going to be talking about payments innovation and of course the UK mobile database that you guys are putting together for mobile payments in the UK. But before we get into some of that, I mean, you've had a long career, 30-year career in the payments industry. So can you tell us a little bit about, your experiences and the background of your career?
Yeah, sure. As you say, I've been around in the industry for almost 30 years. I started off right at the very beginning with IBM. When one of my first jobs was to look after Visa when they were first setting up in Europe. And obviously I've enjoyed the industry for a long time since then. My most recent role was as president of Western Union, where I looked after business payments, mobile, e-commerce, and prepaid cards. Prior to that, I was president of First Data International, looking after all of First Data's activities. So, the world's biggest payments processor, everywhere outside of the United States. So all the way from Argentina, across to Korea, from Norway down to South Africa.
So now that you've joined Vocalink, after you've left Western Union, what really attracted you to this role at Vocalink?
Well, I think, as you know, but I'd like to just take a moment to explain to the people watching this transmission. Vocalink operates the national payments infrastructure for the UK. And we're really at an inflection point in the industry because we've been asked by the UK Payments Council to create a national proxy database. What does that mean? It means that going forward, everybody in the UK who has a bank account will be able to make that bank account accessible from their mobile phone. And so the very first applications will obviously be the ability to use your mobile phone for me to make a payment to you, for example. But it's easily imaginable that people could do many, many more things with that same application. So, for example, a small business might ask to be paid by a consumer, so to send out an invoice. Or you could also imagine a utility company might want to bill a consumer across the same infrastructure. So you can imagine many new applications in areas that have been traditionally served by just cash or by check, and perhaps where the card is not the most convenient method of payment.
So, I mean, sort of as CEO of Vocalink, you're at the center of pushing mobile payments in the UK with this project.
Yes, I mean, together with our partners at the Payments Council, we're the technology company that will deliver the infrastructure. Obviously, the banks in the UK need then to adopt that infrastructure, but you can see across the industry a huge interest and willingness to invest in this technology. It's something that has come of age, and the consumers are truly asking for the kinds of convenience that mobile and other alternative payments, non-card payments, would be able to offer them.
So you can see that's one of the reasons that you were attracted to the role of CEO, and you've been CEO since January. So I know it's only been a few months, but has anything changed? Is it everything you predicted it would be, or is there any surprises?
My biggest surprises are actually positive surprises. If you are operating an infrastructure as critical to an economy as running all of the national payments, so the vast majority of payroll, the vast majority of private payments are direct debits, the vast majority of ATM transactions in the UK. That infrastructure needs to be pretty robust, and the biggest very positive surprise that I have is that it's even more robust than I expected. And so as the foundation stone for offering new services, I think that is fabulous. Also, the technology infrastructure is very modern. So the company's invested quite heavily in bringing out new products, and one of the important products that it brought out over the last few years, which is the building block beneath mobile payments, is our faster payments product. And this is the one that the consumers are able to use today to be able to deliver pretty much instantaneous good funds payments across our network.
I mean, yeah, I think payments is just, it's the banking function that is most important to consumers, and but it needs to be so transparent. Like you said, it has to be beyond robust. It has to be fail-safe, and I think that's very important when talking about that. I mean, but you mentioned a little bit about moving into mobile, and there's a lot of sort of chicken and egg with mobile, where will consumers pick it up? Will merchants have point-of-sale terminals? Will people like yourself doing the infrastructure to push mobile? How is consumer behavior changing in terms of payments, and what will the future payments infrastructure and innovation, what will that look like in the next few years?
Lots of people mean many, many different things when they talk about mobile, and I think that one of the difficulties that people have in understanding what it is because so many people mean something different. So some people, when they talk about mobile, mean contactless card technology, which is certainly a version of mobile.
NFC and yeah.
Or near frequency, NFC technology, contactless technology. I think what I mean when I talk about mobile in the context in which we're thinking about it at the moment is the ability to access not just information about your bank account from your mobile phone, which many people can do today, but also to actually conduct payment transactions across it. Why is it interesting? Well, it's interesting because today, if you want to access your account for making a payment, you need to have a card and a device that accepts a card. And they're not as ubiquitous as, of course they're fairly ubiquitous, but not as ubiquitous as you might expect. So your plumber tends not to have a point-of-sale terminal. The window cleaner tends not to have one. If you want to send money to your friend doesn't have a point-of-sale terminal. And we can come up with a new way of dealing with the acceptance problem where people don't have that card technology. And the other reason why this is important is that if you want then to do a non-card transaction, typically you need to either write a check or you need to be able to have access to your computer. And of course, for people who want to do a more ad hoc transaction, who don't want to sit down and log on to their internet banking, this provides them also the access that they need to have in order to be able to interact with our payment system. So it's very important.
Like giving small donations to charities or
Yes, yeah. I mean, there are so many areas of application. I think one of the most important ones is that it offers the opportunity to replace checks over time, more convenient than cash, easier than having to log on to your screen. So I think it will lift off. There are some great examples around the world where mobile financial services are already well underway. For example, in Kenya, where the vast majority of the adult population in Kenya have already for quite some time been operating their own payment system using mobile as the access tool.
Yeah. So I mean, that sort of leads me on to my next question. I mean, you guys, Vocalink, have just completed research into the use of cards in Europe, and so what are some of the issues facing the European cards industry? What were some of the results of the findings?
Well, I'd like to talk about the specific research and then make a couple of other comments. So the research that we actually did was about the cards industry from the perspective of large merchants who are operating on a multinational basis. And what that research showed was that the large retailers or the multinational retailers are very concerned about first of all, the cost of the infrastructure. And I think it's inevitable that people would be concerned about the cost, but quite striking was the fact that a transaction in one country can cost up to 33 times as much as a transaction in another European country. So the costs are quite varied and wide. And after concerns about costs, then the second biggest concern of the international merchant was really the lack of homogeneity in the technology infrastructure. So very different infrastructures country by country. So what the large retailer is looking for is the ability to have to pick the best deal, I guess, and to have the best price consistently across Europe, and then to be able to integrate technology in a much more simple and coherent way than they're able to do today. And so we've been thinking as a company about how we can help them do that, and looking at providing ways of integrating their payment needs into one central place and helping them with that pan-European integration.
So my final question is really sort of the big CEO type question. You know, where, as CEO, where are you going to take Vocalink, and what is Vocalink's place in the changing payments industry?
Well, the most important thing for Vocalink is to continue to be an absolutely robust and solid processor of financial services for everybody within the country. So nobody will thank us if they don't get paid or if they can't get cash out of an ATM. So that solidity and quality is priority number one. But beyond that, I think the consumer and business is asking for innovation to help them connect each other through payments in a way that's even more accessible than it is today. And I see it as our job to deliver those alternative payment formats, not just mobile, but mobile is a very important one, to add to the range of payments that are already available in the marketplace. So to go beyond where cards can take us today.
Beyond cards. Very interesting. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay, so I mean, wow, right? There's so many things that was, discussed in that regard with David Yates a while back, and if anything, apply that towards the whole concept of, the Finternet. As I take you to the next part of why this is important, check this out on your screen. David Yates mentioned specifically about contactless, right? So look at this. This is straight from the Quant Network. And what does it say? Plain as day, enabling the next wave of innovation. Think about that next wave of innovation. Think about, again, the whole concept of the Finternet. So programmable payments, key focus, and more importantly, the whole idea that you need open banking, you need it to be contactless, and again, emphasis on faster payments. So you have a guy that you brought into your board of directors that's already been there, and he's already done that. So that, again, this is awesome to see this. So another thing I want to also point out in regards to contactless is this right here. And that is from a while back in 2023, November 2023. Watch Tomorrow's Money by Rachel Baugh, right? And you see here digital pound, and more importantly, you see here this whole piece from Gilbert Verdin. And what does it say? Plain as day. As a society, we now operate digitally. Advancements of technologies has enabled us to maintain a global connectedness, but money appears to have been left behind. While some elements have been digitized with the introduction of mobile banking, again, the whole concept of the Finternet, and automated real-time payments, money is not yet truly digital. We see examples of this in the process of making a contactless payment, which is still heavily reliant on back-end systems that are often manual, inefficient, and time-consuming. By making money purely digital, in line with society's needs, we can remove friction, increase efficiency, and provide a new, smarter way to use money. But what will this look like for consumers? So this is actually a video. I'm not going to play the whole video because I shared this in the past. But area of focus basically is what's on Gilbert Verdin's screen. And I know it's hard to see. I wish I could zoom in more. But on his laptop, he's looking at BIS Innovation Hub, Project Meridian, simplifying transactions through, of course, innovation. And more importantly, if you were to go and realize some of this stuff, well, you will see, plain as day, some key things. And so, again, interesting to see that, but more in particular is understanding the whole thing about Vocalink. Because when we go to gilbertverdin.com/CV, I share this with you guys, you see that Gilbert was part of Vocalink slash MasterCard, excuse me, from 2016 to 2018. In fact, he was a chief information security officer. So he, has done work in the past, obviously, with David Yates. And as I take you more over to Vocalink, look what it says. Remember how David Yates was talking about real-time payments in the infrastructure? Well, the UK faster payment service runs on Vocalink's real-time payments infrastructure, enabling consumers and businesses to make instant payments all day, every day. And get into the next part. It's that advancement of UK payments. So when we talk about the Finternet, wouldn't it be the next wave or the next advancement? Yes. Faster payments represent the biggest advancement in UK payments in a generation. The service is available to member banks, while other financial institutions can access the service through agency arrangements, of course, with a member. Back in 2019, more than 2.5 billion faster payments were made, amounting to a total value of over 1.9 trillion pounds. The transformational nature of real-time technology is a strategic platform for development. Think about that for a moment. And on top of that, recently, due to the surge in smartphone adoption, back to Augustine Carstens and the concept of the Finternet, new retail use cases are being developed, in particular those around the request to pay. That in itself stands out because, again, if you study the whole thing of Augustine Carstens and his thing about the Finternet, this all comes full circle, and you can understand why Quant was lucky, I should say, to land somebody like David Yates. All right, this gets interesting, really interesting, because so it says, visit the Faster Payments website to find out more. I've been here before in the past, and when you click here, it takes you to the page. But call this a coincidence, call it whatever you want. I'm not trying to create conspiracy, but I have noticed that ever since this announcement, if you were to click on here, well, it comes up with this. It comes up with a blank page to fasterpayments.org.uk. Okay. Again, I understand it could be a coincidence, but what's also interesting is if when I try to go to, like, for example, Wayback Time Machine, like I normally do, I would provide you guys some information about what happened before all this stuff unwound. But again, let's not forget this, because if we go to Quant Network, most people don't know this. Quant Network is appointed company guarantor of Pay.UK. Why is this significant? Well, first thing is this. You see that Pay.UK moves 17.5 billion, at least back in 2019, 17.5 billion pounds in payments every single day. And if you weren't aware of it, they confirm at least then that Quant Network is a guarantor of Pay.UK, who is the UK's leading retail payments authority. Now, we understand that Quant Network has done a shift from retail payments to wholesale programmable payments, right? Especially with wholesale CBDCs. But don't ever forget, they had this whole thing with Pay.UK, and like I said, is responsible for shaping the payment ecosystem to promote competition, innovation, openness. We also know that Quant Network will put more focus on retail CBDCs in 2027-2028. Now look at this. Pay.UK moves more than 6.7 trillion every day through BACS debit credit, direct debit, faster payments, checks, and PayM. Pay.UK was formed in 2017, having brought together BACS, faster payments, check and credit clearing, and UK payments administration to provide a more aligned and simpler financial infrastructure for the whole of the UK, and is accountable to the Bank of England and the Payment Systems Regulator. All right, we already know about Bank of England. We already know about the BIS, especially with Quant Network. So as we fast forward to over here and go to Pay.UK, well, guess what comes up? It will redirect you to pay.co.uk. And what does it say? I'll actually refresh this. It says here, our website is coming very soon. Okay, is that a coincidence also? I don't think it is. And if anything, watch what it says here in a bit. It says, on your screen a different type of cryptocurrency exchange. Well, as we know, Quant claims that they're not even really a cryptocurrency, but they create interoperability through the ISO TC 307 standard, right, to leverage and provide scale for these other particular blockchain projects, right? So we'll have to see what happens with this. But again, a different type of cryptocurrency exchange, that is incredibly interesting in light of everything that has recently happened with the hiring of David Yates. All right, some recent news. Hong Kong stablecoin regulations in 2024. Crypto tax incentives, tokenization is high priority. This was posted 17 hours ago from Ledger Insights. Now check this out. This is where it gets really, really interesting, because what you see here is, for example, the concept of the Finternet. And what's mentioned here is the first area is tokenization, including the idea of the Finternet coined by the BIS. If you don't know what the Finternet is, turn to the annual report in the BIS chapter 3. I've been there before. But what it mentions here is plain as day, this right here. And that is how the BIS recently introduced the Finternet concept and the whole thing of envisioning an internet-like network of interoperable financial ecosystems. Isn't that Quant without saying Quant, everybody? Look what it says. It places individuals and businesses in the heart of financial interactions, and that's very important. And that's why I'm bringing it to you guys today. Many of the ideas and concepts from the Finternet, in fact, resonate very closely with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority's tokenization project, where they envision a future where tokenization integrates seamlessly with both financial and real-world assets, enabling operations and transactions, otherwise impossible with today's technology. Think about that. Yes, Quant is not being sent like a lot of what's going on in the market, but are you really invested into Quant for the short term, or are you invested into it for that generational wealth? Another thing that points out here is tokenized electronic bills of lading. You can now transfer this digital asset to a financial institution very easily over the blockchain in exchange for funding. We know about R3 Quarter, we know about XDC, but we also know about R3 and Quant. If anything, this will also allow XDC to continuously stand out moving forward. I think XDC will play a huge role with the Finternet moving forward. All right. The other thing I want to take you to is this, because I said to you guys this whole thing about, for example, not just the Finternet, but the whole thing of Banque De France selecting Quant Network. I'm 100% convinced of that. So the opportunities and challenges of tokenization. Fireside chat with Howard Lee and Dennis Bowe. And who posts this? The Hong Kong Monetary Authority. And how long ago? Just 3 days ago, ladies and gentlemen. I fast forward this key area. Listen to this gentleman from Banque De France about what he has to say and how we'll connect it all. Smash that like if you haven't done so already. For all the OGs out there, you're paying attention. I appreciate this. Listen to this. This is how we connected, everybody. Here we go.
Our own DLT, DL3S, with successive technological building blocks enabling us, for example, to optimize liquidity management via so-called auto-collateralization that specialists know very well, or partial payment. So where we are now, we are at a stage, and it is an important priority for us, where we have put our technology and experience at the service of the Eurosystem, by offering our DLT, the L3S, as a support for central bank money, cash settlement of tokenized assets, issuance and trading, as part of the Eurosystem very well, or partial payment. So where we are now, we are at a stage, and it is an important priority for us, where we have put our technology and experience at the service of the Eurosystem, by offering our DLT, the L3S, as a support for central bank money, cash settlement of tokenized assets issuance and trading as part of the Eurosystem current exploratory work on settlement solutions.
All right, so think about what he's talking about in regards to settlement solutions, and especially the whole thing of DL3S, okay? So again, think about some of that stuff, because when we get more into that, that's going to be a key thing in regards to the outline. So I'm going to jump over to Bank of International Settlements and pull this up on your screen. And what do you see here? You see from BIS.org in the review, Francois Villeroy de Galau, Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC, and Bank Intermediation in the Digital Age. More importantly, it's the whole thing in regards to those experiments and how they developed a direct technical expertise, including 2 key innovative assets born in the Banque de France. And again, Banque de France is the oversight of the BIS as a proprietary DLT technology called DL3S. This blockchain has been entirely designed by the Banque de France in order to meet the needs and expectations of market participants as a permission blockchain with efficient delivery and settlement services using CBDC. How many times have we talked about the regulated liability network, and how many times have we talked about the RSN of the regulated settlement network? So think about that, and more importantly, think about this, because when we take you over to here, what do you see? Well, you understand the whole concept of Quant Network and, for example, their work on developing DLT standards. But here's the thing. Quant Network announced a while back that they have contribution to standardization that goes beyond just standardization. And basically speaking, they are also involved in several research projects into standardization and the importance of interoperability. Last year, the Association for Computing Machinery published a research article that contributed to the exploration of the pros and cons of DLT interoperability solution. It has since become a key source of interoperability framework standardized that it is currently in development. They have also been working on, of course, SATP, which is Secure Asset Transfer Protocol. And that working group is focused on developing a more technical standard that complements their work in ISO and is focused on categorization and frameworks. Okay, so just remember that real quick. As to take you over to here, this is from dl.acm.org. What does it say? It says that, for example, Quant and LangChain are piloting a project to provide private currency payments between retail customers from different financial institutions. More importantly, this prototype involves retail customers creating transactions on a public permission Ethereum network. These payment amounts between the customers are tallied, even though the identities involved in the transactions are hidden via zero knowledge proof technology. Remember I said that about zero knowledge proof technology. As all payments are recorded, currency exchanges between financial institutions can be netted and settled, don't forget about that part about settlement, efficiently on a separate private permission Ethereum network. The blockchain interoperability solution infrastructure to allow this netting and settlement to occur is, yes, you read that right, Quant's Overledger, where the related interoperability applications are built on top of it utilizing Overledger's cross DLT standardized data model. All right, that's awesome. But what about the whole thing with Banque de France? Well, look at this. You have here from the World Bank, yes, the World Bank, about interoperability frameworks. And what does it say here? There's 4 key things of focus. It says developing interoperability framework requires a stakeholder process and a long-term vision for the ID system. As per the European interoperability framework, there are 4 interoperability layers that need to be defined. And area of focus is not just legal interoperability and organizational interoperability, but it's the semantic interoperability, which is to ensure the meaning of exchange data and information is consistent, and how those systems must adopt the same data standards and construct data dictionaries. But it's also the technical interoperability, because that's going to enable machine-to-machine communication. Remember I just mentioned that? Systems that must adopt the same technology standards for software, physical hardware, components, and systems and platforms. Those 4 layers, the interoperability frameworks, also rely on cross-cutting integrated public service governance to ensure usability, security, privacy, and performance. So again, focus on technical interoperability and semantic interoperability. Why? Well, back to another citation from the Quant Network. A unified ledger or programmable platform, as proposed by institutions like the Bank for International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund, again, back to the beginning of the outline, and the Regulated Liability Network will evolve in layers. Evolve those layers and create the full-scale Finternet to be realized, everybody. Standardized national and regional platforms developed through public-private partnerships will gradually interoperate globally. I'm not going to play 15 minutes of this video. I already shared this before. But if we jump back to the whole thing, what do you see here? You see from the Quant Network that they have seen great development on both, and this is why I'm highlighting it, everybody, semantic and technical layers. But even though the industry has semantic interoperability, which is worth pointing out, they are not formally standardized. And if anything, Quant allows that through its blockchain foundation, the foundation for building on blockchain, which is ISO TC 307, the Quant Network standard. This is what creates fragmentation. The solution, in his opinion, or this particular person, Dr. Luke Riley, excuse me, is to have a formalized standardization that can be used by most protocols. And it gets better because most people don't even know about this because they haven't been exposed to it because it's before you came into Quant, most likely. Back in December 6th of 2018, Quant Network joins a thing called MOBI, okay? And MOBI, basically speaking, is Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative. It's a global consortium of industry-leading automakers, technology-based startups, and other mobility players. Say what you want. Remember I was doing that whole coverage about ISO TC 307 and Ford Motor Company? Exactly. But also, look what it says here. It says that as a member of MOBI, Quant Network will collaborate with industry leaders to pursue the creation of a minimum viable ecosystem that aims to standardize blockchain and related technologies to bring transparency and trust to the industry, consumers, communities, reduce frictions and transaction costs in mobility. Quant Network's blockchain operating system, Overledger, provides interoperability between blockchains and existing networks and systems, reducing barriers to adoption, facilitating innovation, uses of blockchain tech, and with low risk to enterprise. With over 100 member companies and growing, MOBI is collaborating with a wide variety of players in the mobility and blockchain space. They're working on, or with many, I should say, of the world's largest automakers and mobility ecosystem players. Back to all that talk about ecosystems, along with numerous startups, nonprofits, governments, transit agencies, technology companies. By working together, they can make mobility services more efficient, affordable, greener, safer, and less congested. Think about that, everybody, and think about what Augustine Carson's vision of the Finternet is. This all matches up. And more importantly, what about Quant and Hyperledger? Interactive presentation to find out the best path to follow the search for true universal interoperability from Dr. Luke Riley. Why is this important? Well, if anything, I will play a little bit of this. Listen to what he says in regards to this. Here we go.
So this is the first slide introducing the first part of the terminology we're using for the rest of the talk. So we have got different distributed ledger technologies and different distributed ledger networks. So what is a different distributed ledger technology? Something like Ethereum-based, Hyperledger Fabric-based, Bitcoin-based. These are all different technologies. But then you can have multiple instances of networks using the same technology. So you can have a few different Ethereum networks, testnet, mainnet, so on. Many different Fabric networks implemented by different consortium. So when we talk about interoperability, we want to connect at least two DLNs together, and they may or may not have the same technology. And then, okay, that's the terminology. Then why do we want to do it? Here's a few basic ideas. There's different features in different technologies. There's DLT apps that have already been built on a particular DLN, but actually we want to use a new DLN for some reason. Maybe it's quicker, but we still want to integrate with that app that's already been built. And maybe we just want to connect to multiple consortium networks that have already been established, and we had no say on the establishment of them, and they've just ended up using different networks and possibly different technologies. So what are our main scenarios for interoperability? So I've got 5 categories here. The first 3 are, I would normally say cryptocurrency, but this is a fabric talk, so digital asset digital asset scenarios. So number 1, the standard interoperability application is your atomic swap between ledgers. But then, okay, you might want to migrate, you might want to move a digital asset from one DLN to another, and you might want to, migration might need to be permanent, but it could also be temporary and need to loop back. And you might need a different implementation to do a permanent burn and mint compared to lock, mint, lock, and unlock on the way back. So there are 3 separate categories so far. And then we get to the more general categories at the end: reading data, transactional state from one ledger and putting that information on another ledger, or triggering a transaction on a second ledger from a transaction on the first ledger.
Okay, so again, just trying to pound it home, right, from Dr. Luke Riley. Now check this out. This is actually from the Banque De France, and if anything, you'll see how this all comes into fruition. So Banque De France has this particular press release about the exploratory work settlement of central bank money using new technologies. And what do you see in regards to this? Eurosystem, exploratory work on settlement in central bank money using new technologies. First batch of experiments successfully completed by Banque De France with DL3S extended functionalities on automated wholesale payments. Now, think about this for a second, okay? When we get more into it, what does it say here? This is from Ledger Insights. It says Project Venus involved in delivery versus payment between 2 different DLT networks, the GSDAP and the DL3S, which use different technologies. The settlement was instantaneous and atomic, back to Dr. Luke Riley, compared to the average 2 to 5 day settlement for issuances. Even if instant settlement is not always desirable, with the DLT, it can be performed at a predefined time, allowing for liquidity planning. Plus, atomic settlement eliminates counterparty risk. GSDAP is based on digital assets Canton and is underpinned by Hyperledger Besu. DL3S uses Hyperledger Fabric. Hash time lock contracts, HTLC, were used to synchronize the 2 ledgers to enable atomic settlement across the 2 networks. Again, back to Dr. Luke Riley with his explanation a while back. Now, why is this important in regards to DL3S? It's because we even have, once again, IBM cited here, straight from research.ibm.com/blog CBDC bank modernization. What does it say? Plain as day. The blockchain platform used for the experiment, called DL3S, is a platform based on Hyperledger Fabric that embeds an asset derived by IBM Research called Token SDK, a Hyperledger Labs project that enables unique privacy and audit support features. Token SDK offers a platform-agnostic token. Think about that, everybody. Isn't Quant Network blockchain agnostic? Right. And this says platform-agnostic token. Right. Exchange capability with configurable privacy levels via dedicated modules called drivers. The zero knowledge asset transfer. My gosh, remember I said don't forget about the part about zero knowledge? Exactly. So we connected that. Now look at this. This gets really, really good, because what you see here is, for example, and if anything, this was last September. What's it say? JP Morgan, 8 Italian banks involved in Banque De France wholesale CBDCs trials last month, September 5th, 2024. But more importantly, when we get further down to it, it says, now a similar experiment was executed on France's DL3S platform with 8 Italian banks. On one hand, the interbank liability crystallizes on the AB lab chain, and the wholesale CBDC transfer takes place on the DL3S platform. The settlement of the liabilities on the AB lab chain and the wholesale CBDC were synchronized using a hash time locked contract, HTLC. From, for example, I'll just highlight that right here, Hyperledger Foundation, it says they have resilience. The resilience of DLT layers or relayers depends on the consensus protocols it runs, particularly that of the connecting chain. Each consensus protocol has limits on the percentage of malicious nodes that it can handle. The resilience of the entire network is dependent on the number of nodes in the network. With oracles, the more oracles that feed data about the same topic, the more resilient the system, generally speaking, will be. An API gateway resilience is determined by the number of instances running, its load balancing capabilities, and can be tuned for each type of use case. Combining permissionless and permission DLNs, as yet there is no technical or convincing theoretical demonstration of how this can be completed using DLT relayers without compromising security. The brief analysis above points to a clear conclusion. API gateways have significant advantages over the other approaches, and it was for this reason that Quant chose the API gateway model for Overledger, our own solution to this challenge of interoperability. Then it goes on to mention, Overledger is easily integrated with multiple DLTs, including Hyperledger Fabric and Hyperledger Besu, and Quant is constantly expanding the list of supported DLTs. I remember when that happened. That was roughly March of 2023, I believe, or 2022. Actually, 2022. That's right, 2022 with the Overledger update. Okay, 2.0 update. Now, a little bit more in regards to this, just in case you're still not on board. What do we have here? We have, for example, back in 2023, full DLT interoperability model set up for exploratory work, solutions, features, and technology. The DL3S DLT is using Hyperledger Fabric. Remember, Banque De France? Exactly. And what do we see plain as day? Right in the middle, you see Banque De France DL3S DLT platform. And what does it say? NCB1 node, dedicated cash wallet, Bank C, Euro system node, transit wallet. And again, like it says, Banque De France node, dedicated cash wallet, Bank B, dedicated cash wallet A. Why is that so important? Well, again, boil it, mash it, stick it in a freaking stew. It's the Overledger in action. And I know this is quite to get into. We're going to wrap it up. I know this is one of the most ultimate deep dives, but it says, this is from blogs.oracle, bridge to cross-ledger blockchain interoperability. Oracle recognizes this showcasing of the interoperability based on Quant's multi-ledger token solution at an Oracle event hosted by who? Hyperledger. Oracle has shown its introduction of tokenization capability. And back to the whole recent thing that we shared earlier in regards to Ledger Insights. Yeah, look just real quick. Because remember how we mentioned tax incentives and tokenization high priority, and only posted 17 hours ago from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority? Yeah, look what it says. Because this pounds home this, because look, Oracle's shown recently introduced tokenization capability based on token taxonomy framework. That adds up in action and demonstrated a number of loyalty points scenarios starting at a 26-minute mark to the recording. I'm not going to play the recording, but including an asset exchange between Oracle blockchain and ERC20 tokens. In the scenario, it was sketched out at the event. A frequent flyer has been issued loyalty points by the airline, represented as fungible tokens in their account and Oracle blockchain. The tokens can be redeemed for services on the Oracle blockchain, and Oracle is part of the Quant ecosystem. For example, a car rental from an airline partner company or swapped into more liquid assets on the Ethereum chain. In this example, the frequent flyer decides to spend some tokens on a car hire on the Oracle blockchain and transfer the remainder over the Ethereum. At the event, Dr. Luke Riley, head of innovation at Quant, showed how the use case benefits from using Quant's Overledger solution to implement the asset swap mark in the recording. And later on in a deep dive, I might get more into this. Shows how it all works. But how does Overledger carry this out? And here we go. Boil it, mash it, stick in and stew. It orchestrates the hash time lock contract, HTLC interaction between OBP and Ethereum. The easiest way to describe it is a series of steps involving traveler and airline, and we're not going to get into all that today. I'm telling you flat out. Shout out to Shani Harrell. How do you say Quant without saying Quant? Well, how about this? Here's your visualization. Here's how it all works. And if anything, we tie that into what I shared with you guys earlier in regards to Banque De France, and especially the whole concept of what we talked about in regards to zero knowledge asset transfer, and more importantly, the whole thing of this machine to machine communication, and the whole thing of what we talked about earlier in regards to what, everybody? DL3S. So the writing is on the wall, the evidence has been presented. So guys, that's where it's at for me. Simply do me a favor, if you watch the entire outline, and simply type this into the comments, and that is DY, as in David Yates, and I'll know that you listened to the entire outline. I think it's very crucial to get this out to you guys. Yes, it goes the distance, but understand this. If, it's not if, Banque de France is oversight of the Bank of International Settlements. The Bank of International Settlements is the central bank of central banks. So we already talked about Basel, BCBS, basically choosing Quant, showed you evidence, and also showed you this evidence. Don't focus on Quant on the short term. Focus on the long term. If anything, focus on regulations. Regulations will be the enabler of all these particular ones that are tied into real utility. But I can't give you financial advice, and I won't. I'm just providing you guys research. You will have to make these decisions for yourself. But for me, Q&T will be absolutely huge moving forward as we get to some of these goals for our personal finish line, if you will, in the marathon of blockchain distributed ledger technology. So thanks again for tuning in. I won't keep you any more further. We'll see you on the next one.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. Say goodbye to complicated setups and hello to Decent Wallet, the hassle-free solution to your digital currency needs. With just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.